Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to the Operation Freedom platform. This presentation is going to be a bit different from anything that we have ever done on this platform. It's a live demonstration, and I've enlisted the help of our IT director, Nick Ruiz, and with the help of his team behind him, we are going to try to, if you will, dissect an issue which has been brought to the forefront, at least on our platform, starting back on, well, the inception of Operation Freedom, the radio show, 2010, when we had Paul Rosenberg speaking about how players within our own government can actually monitor, if you will, let's use that as the politically correct term, monitor situations that are occurring, whether it be on a phone or whether it be on someone's computer or whether it be on, I don't know, a company's database or a country's database or a voting system's database. And we have the opportunity on our platform that I believe no other platform has, and that's the expertise of Nick Ruiz and his team. So today we're going to dissect an issue that there's been so many there has been so many sides to this equation as it relates to election integrity and possible interference. Is it fact or is it fiction? There are some people that will tell you election interference does not occur. Every election, at least in the United States, is safe and secure. In fact, CISA, a division of the Department of Homeland Security, said that immediately after the 2020 election, and they have since changed that, where they said, well, actually, it wasn't so safe and secure. There are many people that say, elections are easy to manipulate. Their databases are easily manipulated. But in order to do that, you have to have a room-size supercomputer to do it. So what we're going to do today with Nick and his expert team is we're going to dissect election integrity and the potential for interference. Is it fact or is it fiction? It's my honor to introduce our Director of IT Services at Operation Freedom, Nick Ruiz. Nick, welcome, of course, to our platform. This is a hybrid of the Insider Insight show and the Department of Advanced Research show that you host.
It is. We've invented something entirely new. It's the Department of Insider Insight.
Okay, Nick. So, election integrity and interference, fact or fiction?
Somewhere in between at the moment, but certainly very, very plausible. And I know, you and I speak almost every day, but there are so many narratives and there's so many different interpretations of the how it can be done that. As I've often said, Doc, there's not a lot of things in life I'm good at. Tech is one of them, though. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of illustrate how some of this stuff works in a practical capacity, because a lot of what is spoken about in terms of election integrity, voter fraud, things like that, it's spoken about at the very superficial level, or it's spoken about at the very theoretical level, which is great, which is fine. But eventually there comes a point where you have to be able to practically demonstrate, hey, look, here's an example of it really happening. And more often than not, what I've seen, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this, what I've seen is a lot of identitarian sort of, this is what happened, and never mind, the details of whether or not it's even technically plausible or possible. This is totally really what happened because we said so. And what I was hoping to do with this today, Doc, is just illustrate that, yes, it absolutely 100%, it can be done. I've told you many times, there's no such thing as hack-proof. If you want to make something hack-proof, pull the plug out of the wall.
Right.
Other than that, if you have to access data, as a rule, if you or a user or a company or a government or whoever has to access data, through legitimate means, that means those who want to access that data through illegitimate means have a pathway in, which means there's no such thing as hack-proof. Are there some that are so implausibly, impossibly difficult that it's not even worth talking about? Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, I wouldn't really want to apply the word hack-proof. I mean, if you have an IT guy and he says, hey, I built something that's hack-proof, you're being lied to.
Mhm.
Right. So what I'm getting at here is, yeah, this can be done. And it's not as, I guess the word I'm looking for, Doc, is, and this has gotten under my skin since 2020, right? It's not as fanciful as people make it out to be. It's not as romantic as people make it out to be. Nobody's rappelling through a ceiling like Ocean's 11, and nobody's sitting in a dark room with green lights on and a black hoodie and a Guy Fawkes mask cracking hashes and stuff. I mean, for purposes of demonstration, I was going to wear a black hoodie and a Guy Fawkes mask today, but truth be told, we actually don't wear that stuff because, number one, it's usually pretty warm in here with all the equipment, and the polystyrene masks smell weird and they chafe your forehead. So, I mean, if we want to maintain any level of anonymity, we'll just shut our webcam off or unplug them. That aside, however, we've gone with something more festive today. But that aside, no, in all seriousness, I wanted to just illustrate at a practical level what can and cannot be done.
So take us through the screens people are going to be looking at, and take us through what you're working on, Nick. Do you have a room-size supercomputer in your office there?
Not that I've noticed. I mean, if I do, it'd be pretty sweet, but unfortunately not. I have, just to give you a rundown of what we have just two standard, albeit custom-built, liquid-cooled standard CPU towers. They are fairly high performance. Got a couple of laptops in here, but last I checked, we don't have a 48U rack running, any Hadoop clusters or anything like that. Unfortunately, I mean, it'd be pretty cool, but no, not at the moment. So,
for the purposes of this demonstration, you'll be using a laptop. Is that correct?
For purposes of this demonstration, so I can share the screen so the folks can see, exactly what's going on. I'm going to be using just one of my standard, desktop, my main machine that I use every day. I compile Operation Freedom's content on it. There's nothing. It's not some insane Cray computer or supercomputer or whatever that, requires a small building. I mean, it's not Alan Turing and Tom Flowers, so let's put it that way. It's not Colossus. But what I'm about to show, the folks today, you can do on a 15-year-old laptop running the lightest weight Linux distribution you can conceivably think of. You can do it I have a Surface Book on my desk here, so you can do it on that. You could actually do it on something as even innocuous as, for folks that know what this is, Raspberry Pi. I mean, just tiny little, low-powered CPU, because really all we're interested in is sending and receiving some basic CLI, which stands for, and you'll hear that more often, command line interface, basic command line interface instructions to a remote server that contains our, as folks will see shortly, our theoretical mock election that we're going to be doing here. So no, you don't need, there's no like insane algorithms that require, 400 gazillion byte per second, compilation or computation rate or anything like that. So no, this can be done. And more often than not, when it is done from disposable machines. It's done from disposable laptops, because that becomes evidence.
So, Nick, many people believe that in order to interfere in an election, you have to alter the databases on hundreds and hundreds of individual voting machines. However, that would potentially increase the risk of getting caught. So when folks want to interfere, let's use the word maybe even hack, they want to be, my impression is they want to be able to get in and get out with the least chance of being caught and doing the job they were hired to do, altering the database. So if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to potentially a larger store of data at a county level, at a state level, at a nation state level, and do the dirty there rather than messing with dozens or hundreds of voting machines. Am I off on that assessment?
Well, no, because you're going to want to take the path of least resistance. And in this instance, you're talking about, and again, we're by no means am I saying this has happened or is happening or anything like that, but in theory, if you were to have a group of bad actors, yeah, you're going to want to take the path of least resistance and the lowest chance of getting caught. These guys are not interested in getting famous. They're interested in getting paid.
Right.
All right. So these are professionals. These aren't script kiddies. And, when I was in high school a bazillion years ago, we used to, we wanted to all be the smartest kid in the room. So you'd leave little calling cards and stuff because, well, it was cool at the time. And So, that's a completely different culture. The guys that theoretically, again, that would be responsible for this, they're not interested in fame. They're just in it for the check. So that being said, yeah, I mean, one of the narratives that surround the whole election debate thing is that every single, and you see the effort being put into to either acquire or investigate or look into or take apart or examine or do forensics on the individual front-facing voting machine that you or I would go into wherever our local precinct is, and we're going to walk in there, we're going to hit the buttons on the machine, whatever it is, or the if it's a paper ballot, ultimately that would be run through a scanner. So you see this massive push for people to get their hands on these front-facing, voter-facing election interfaces. Be that so I'm just bear in mind how many variations of that there are, software and hardware combinations. So let's file that in the memory bank for a second, right? So you see, all these people running around saying, oh, I have a voting machine. We're going to open up the voting machine, and in there is going to be ftrump.exe. Mm-hmm. No, there isn't. there just isn't, because just to even get that there on any meaningful scale is possible, but preposterously and needlessly difficult. Now multiply that across the entire country, every state, every county. Yeah, I mean, there's ones that are common. You talk about systems like, and you hear all the common names mentioned. Oh, this software provider, that software provider, or whatever. But there's so many variations, and there's so many different network configurations, and there's so many different software configurations and hardware configurations, right? So, as an IT support guy many moons ago, when I did that, your nightmare was to go into any environment, I've been in them before, where there's a couple of Linux machines, there's a couple of Apple machines, there's a couple of PC machines, there's a couple of Androids, there's a couple of iPhones, and somebody's got an Etch-a-Sketch. Great. Now you're dealing with unlike platforms, so you really, in many instances, there are some where you can use a standard practice across all operating systems and devices and whatnot, but for the most part, you're going to have several paths of best practices just to deal with the varying operating systems and network configs and whatever. So in a perfect world, everybody runs the same machine with the same build of the same software, and life is nice and easy, and your IT guy smiles every day and he's very happy. That's not always the case. So let's just, again, imagine across the country you have ballot scanners, you have some are touchscreen voting machines, some are non-touchscreen voting machines, some are more along, and the age and the variances of these software, and assuming that some are running on a Linux base, some are running on a Windows base, to turn around and to just, really assemble, and depending upon who you listen to, there's this fanciful idea that there's thousands of nation-state hackers, and they're all getting together, and they're going to hack every individual voting machine. Really? I want to meet their project manager. I want to know who can get 5,000 people, 10,000 people to do something that complex perfectly. One time where it's a time-sensitive issue, because I want to hire them.
Right.
I have issues getting 5 people to do things correctly because it's the human factor. Right. So the notion of having this army in this like airplane hangar that's dark with sweet techno music playing, all breaking into every individual voting machine, changing your Trump vote to Biden. No, I don't think so. So the path of least resistance is you want to go for what's called, and maybe I'm using this a little out of context, but the SPOF or SPOA, single point of access, single point of failure is SPOF. So I want to go to the path of least resistance where I can put in the least amount of effort, gain the most benefit, and have the lowest chance of getting caught. And that is either going to be your state-level databases or your county-level databases, especially when we do a little bit of cerebral arithmetic and we realize that in a lot of these states, Michigan is one of them, I live in the other, in the wonderful state of Pennsylvania, where a handful of counties determine how the state goes.
That's right.
So, okay, so Mr. Hacker here, right? So, I can hack 5 bazillion individual voting machines and probably get caught doing it. Or I can affect 4 counties and flip an entire state. That seems like better value for money to me. And I can do that in, or Someone could do that theoretically, again, in a matter of minutes. And if we could, Doc, one of the things I'd also like to talk about as we get into the more technical side of this is something that hasn't been brought up that's also gotten under my skin recently, which is a lot of folks want to make this out to be somebody rolls out of bed, or some bodies, 5,000 people somewhere in a nation state somewhere, roll out of bed in the morning on election day and they go, hey, you know, guys, the potluck's canceled. What are we doing today? Let's hack the election. Right? So they make it sound like they just roll, like it just happens. Like election day rolls around, everybody gathers up, gives a fist bump, and then just goes to work and proceeds to flip the outcome of an entire democracy's election. And the reality is, I know I'm being a bit facetious and sarcastic about that, but there's a lot of prep work that goes into these kinds of things. And that's not just elections. That's any, cyber intrusion, digital intrusion, which we've had a lot of recently, if you've noticed. But there's a lot of prep work that often goes into that no one has even mentioned exist, let alone even some of the tiny little intricacies that go on there. So if we could, Doc, as we get into the more technical side of this, as we talk about our theoretical or a mock election here, I want to spend a minute or two just talking a little bit about the what leads up to it, because it's not just election day, smash your face on the keyboard, get the result you want. If you are going to do something like hack a state election or county election database, like private sector hacks, there's going to be a lot of prep work there.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking prep work of months, many months.
Months, years, yeah.
Okay. So, Nick, do you want to take our viewers through the different screens they're going to be seeing and what's going to be happening here?
You got it. So now, through the miracles of modern technology and determination, what we're going to do is we're going to pop open here. Here we are. All right. So on my screen here, you guys are going to notice three things. Okay. So this primary screen here off to the left, which you guys should be able to see my mouse cursor moving on here. This is a standard bash terminal, BASH, all right? And that's a standard Linux terminal. It's not super secret software. Anybody that's listening to this can download effectively and install any distribution of Linux on the planet. And this is pretty much the terminal screen that you're going to see. Nothing really all that exciting about it, except we are running this in a Windows environment, and that is only for purposes of this demonstration, so all my snazzy hardware here works and I can record this. Normally, this would be native to a Linux machine, but this is running in a contained environment in a Windows machine for purposes of this demonstration. Which, by the way, for the few folks that might be going, how is he doing that? It's called MOBA Xterm. Great little program, also very free, as often is the case with things in the wonderful world of Linux. This is actually a free program to download, and it gives a Windows machine, I would say 85% of the outbound and inbound interactivity that a standard Linux machine would have. And I've only discovered this recently. It is actually very cool. This up here is just my standard file explorer, which I don't think we're going to need for this, but just in case, if we have to find any public key files, private key files, stuff like that, that's where we're going to find them. And yes, I do use Midnight Commander because I'm old. And then down here, you'll notice we have a web app. Okay, we have a web app here, which I'm scrolling up and down here now. You'll notice this is hosted at an IP address. So, full disclosure, I, along with a couple of friends of mine, set this up a few nights ago and dressed it up a bit. Dr. Dave, you'd seen this page once before already. Mm-hmm. This particular page here, this is full disclosure, and I know for the techies amongst us that are watching, you're going to go, what is he doing? So this is the most creative way I, along with a few other people, came up with of illustrating really, really basic concepts like remote code execution, server side interaction with various platforms versus what you see on your screen and so forth. Full disclosure, no, this is not how a real election hack would happen, at least insofar as the stuff being used. Then again, I say that I don't think there's any states or counties out there that would be hosting, their front-facing reporting app in a WordPress environment. But then again, you never know. But that's what this is. CMS stands for Content Management System. That is what WordPress is. And it's built on, and this is going to be important a little bit later, a LAMP stack. So LAMP is LAMP. Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Right? So we're really concerned today with the L and the M. Linux is the operating system that runs the server that's hosting this particular single page WordPress installation. And the M in that equation is MySQL, which is a flavor of SQL database, which, truth be told, is used in real world elections, but as a mechanism of organizing tally data. In the instance of WordPress, the MySQL is used really to organize all the content that you're going to see on page. Okay, so again, LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP makes up the entire tech, air quotes, stack of this system. So again, this is a very elementary demonstration of just remote code execution, server-side execution, and how it can really happen. And that, no, you don't need 5,000 people hacking every individual vote because they hate your liberty and freedom that much. There's an easier way to do this, is where I'm going with this.
And on that bottom graphic, that's a screen share from my computer. I am hosting, correct, that data on my computer, correct?
Yep, and as a matter of fact, Doc.
So people are seeing what I'm seeing on my computer in that bottom graphic that is being screen shared on Nick's screen there. So I'm essentially the state or the county database, and this is what I'm looking at. Correct, Nick?
Correct. And as a matter of fact, anybody right now, because this is a front-facing site, could put that IP in their browser and see the exact same thing that you're seeing.
Okay.
So this is for really real. This isn't like, a contained environment. This is actually it's a box that I lease. Folks that know what they're looking at very shortly will be able to know exactly how and where and how it's being done. But this is a very simple WordPress installation on a server that I have access to, and I built for purposes of this demonstration. It's nothing crazy, but anyone could go to that, Doc. You can see that. So for purposes of our demonstration, you are going to play the role of the Honorable Dr. Dave Janda, who is going to be reporting the election results in our fictitious state of New York, California. And the two candidates that are going to be running against each other is my good friend Perky, Nick Taylor, and Jonna. So those are our two candidates. Those are their vote totals there. But this is HTTP front facing. So that's your screen in this instance, but anyone could, as of right now, go to that IP and see that.
Okay, Nick, hit it.
Okay. Well, first things first, and that is I wanted to mention the prep a little bit that goes into this. Because as a bad actor, right, so if I wanted to come into this particular system, is there any way that I could use exclusively technology to achieve this end? I could. It'd be wildly effort intensive. It could be wildly difficult. You're talking about things like port scanning, amongst other things. But I would have to know where this is first. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even know where this is. So that presents a problem unto itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to get into, could be as much as a year outside of the election. We could be as far as a year out. Mm-hmm. So we have our two candidates that are running against each other. We got Perky and we got Jonna running against each other in this election. Now, let's say Dick, i.e. Perky, is, let's say he wants to win really bad. Really bad. Like by any means necessary. He really wants to win. So he has the presence of mind to contact a potentially morally questionable and certainly financially motivated, let's say very dark gray hat technologist, me. And he says, hey, look, Nick, we got an election coming up in a year. I really want to win. So I'm going to give you this big-ass duffel bag full of money to make sure I really win. And I'm going to give you another one if I happen to win. Oh, all right, speaking my language. I mean, you can, we have duffel bags of money, and we have, I'll take crypto too. We're not above that sort of thing. So let's say that agreement is made. Now, I have a year from now until election day to prepare to do one thing, which we're going to get into here in a second. So how do you start that? How do you start the reconnaissance? How do you even begin to go, all I really need to do to get him to where he needs to be is I need to, bust into the theoretical New York California election database and just change a couple of entries when, nobody's looking. Okay. Well, I got to get in there first. So what I'm going to do is I might go on things like LinkedIn. I might go on things like the ladders or any, professional employment site. And I might start to look around for people who either work in the Secretary of State's office of our theoretical state here, or I might look for people that are 1 degree removed from them. The kind of people that if I could access their stuff and send an email from their machine to a person that worked in that office, it's probably going to get open. So the prep work portion of this, and I know I'm leaving a lot out. I'm trying to just be as brief as I can about this, but the prep work involves gaining access to the credentials that make it so you don't need to do all the crazy hash cracking and stuff that people think really happens. You just waltz in the front door, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a year. I'm going to go, who do I, let's see, maybe I find somebody on LinkedIn. Maybe they're an intern. Okay. Well, they're probably not going to have very many admin credentials, right? Okay. Well, you know what? They're probably new. They're pretty young. Maybe they'll click an email and open it. Or maybe I look at an age range and I go, you know what? Over a certain age, I have a pretty good ratio of people just randomly clicking emails and not considering where those links might have come from. You know what? I'm going to spam out a couple of hundred phishing emails. And in those emails, it's going to say, hey, the Sultan of whatever left you $10 million. All we need is, click this link to claim it. And let's say I send out 100 of them and 2 people click it. Well, that's now 2 machines that I have some component of access to, whether that's a keylogger, a cookie enumerator, something along those lines that's going to give me some foothold, whereupon they're going to take their personal machine and then proceed to connect to some level of infrastructure at the Secretary of State's office. Now, that's more common now, post-COVID, where everybody works from home.
Right.
There's a lot, and by the way, for the info security professionals that are listening, I don't know how you guys do it, because in the day and age of COVID, if I had a 500 to 1,000 person company, they said you have to secure this thing 100% bulletproof to some standard of compliance. When you have everybody and their mother that's logging in with their phone, their laptop, their smartwatch, their calculator, and their toaster, that makes that job so difficult, because it's like, Doc, it would be perhaps a bad analogy, but it's almost like in medicine where you're trying to quarantine an environment and there's a hallway running right up the middle of it where people are just coming in. It's never going to work. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to exploit that. And so I'm going to start sending out phishing emails. I'm going to start sending out malicious links. I'm going to start sending out things along the lines that are going to either get me a keylog or something that's going to get me the basic credentials to log into maybe an employee portal. Maybe it's not, it's not just you're automatically, because the holy grail is you want to get the IT guy, the head of, you want to get his stuff, because he's going to have all the stuff you're looking for, public keys, private keys, and stuff like that. Well, let's say I can't get to him. Okay, and he's going to be too smart to click the links anyway. Certainly from an email address he doesn't realize. Well, maybe I can make it look like it got sent from somebody he knows. Okay, so now I'm going to go, and now eventually you're going to get to that point where you're going to get the requisite credentials. Right? Maybe you got a server key. Maybe you have some usernames and passwords and whatnot. But eventually you're going to amass enough stuff, and this is more difficult now in a day and age of 2-factor authentication. It's not impossible, but for purposes of our demonstration, we're just assuming there's absolutely zero security in place because it's just easier to illustrate. But there's very practical ways that, you can prevent this stuff from working, but there's also practical ways around it. So that said, let's say for about a year, I've been fishing around and feeling around, and I finally get what I'm looking for. I got username and passwords to a couple of admin, Secretary of State, employee portals, infrastructure portals and stuff. And now all of a sudden I have some info as far as, maybe they, for purposes of our demonstration, maybe they host their database locally. It is connected to the internet, but it's hosted locally. Oh, well, I can go through their machines that are connecting to the Wi-Fi in the building or in the server room, whatever, and I can start to enumerating, there's the IP, there's the MAC. Okay, this is getting good. You can see how it starts to come together, but this is the boring part. This is not people like rappelling through the ceiling doing Ocean's 11. This is really boring, antisocial people like me sitting around being disgustingly persistent and obsessive-compulsive over a few basic details that make all the difference. So no one's mentioned that, by the way.
Right.
And that's what's been driving me insane. It's like, you talk about, and that's just for something as simple as what we're doing here, which is one nerd, with a terminal command line open, to affect one county or one state's database. Never mind doing every single voting machine on the planet. Mm-hmm. Right? But I don't want to think about the prep work that would have to go into that. So moving on. So now we're going to move on a little bit here to it's election day. Mm-hmm. Right? It's election day. I've got my giant valise full of cash, thanks to Mr. Taylor. And I know if I do this correctly and I don't get caught, I got another big valise full of cash coming my way. Sweet. I like that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Right? So here we go. Now, we talked about the prep work. So for purposes of what we're doing here, my prep work has yielded me only one thing. Two things, really. I have a server location and a user. Mm-hmm. And I have the Holy Grail, which is a private key. So for those of you that are familiar, when you log in at the SSH level, secure socket host, or the SFTP level, or the FTP level, so what we're doing is we're logging into the server. We're not logging into this website's administration side. We're going deeper than that. Mm-hmm. We're going to the Linux level. That's the L in LAMP. So we're going to log in at the Linux level, and we're going to start to do some stuff. But in my prep work, my fictitious theoretical prep work, I've managed to get my hands on. I know the IP of the data of the actual server that hosts what I want to alter, and I have a username, and I have a private key, and that's all very plausible to get your hands on. There's best practices as far as handling them, but look, human error. Somebody's going to make a mistake. They're going to email something to somebody when they shouldn't. They're going to put it in a place that's accessible through a conventional shared network. And let's say I get my hands on one of these things. Right. So election day rolls around, and here we are. And Dr. Dave is in the Secretary of State's office, and he is getting ready to report the election numbers of the much contested Taylor Lynn Badger Party versus Cupcake Party election. And you can see we have some vote totals on this screen here. Now, Dr. Dave, you can see that there. So you got we got Nick Taylor, we got 25,000, and then we have Jonna Lynn of the much lauded Cupcake Party with her 30,000 votes, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Now, only one of those people paid me.
Right.
That's mistake number one.
Right.
So what we're going to do is we're going to head over to our terminal screen here, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to log into the server, SSH port 22, that hosts this particular mock election database. So we're going to do that right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to ignore the penguins that are crawling all over my terminal screen here, because that's a Linux screensaver, and it's very cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for my PEM file, P-E-M. So rather conveniently, we have... where did I put it? The election demo. Okay, so we're going to do... like so, and now we're in that drive, and there we have a PEM file. So we have election server key, rather practically named and conveniently named, I should like to point out. Election server key. So what we're going to do is we're going to SSH in. So we're going to do an SSH, right? And then we're going to do the key. That's one piece of the data that I acquired in my prep work. And the other is the exact server location. Now, the username is going to give away exactly what service I'm using for this demonstration, but that's perfectly fine. I have this. This is also from my recon work that I did, my theoretical recon work. All right, so we're going to do like so. And miracles of modern technology, as they say in every bad hacker movie, I'm in, right? So now I'm in at the server level here that hosts this database. Now, did anything change on your screen?
Nothing.
Okay. No idea that I'm in there.
Right.
Okay.
Now you need to use your tool, right, to manipulate, to do the deal, to do the dirty, right?
Right. Now, speaking of tools, yeah. I know there's been much contention about a certain tool. Mm-hmm. All right. And as far as the whether or not it was used to affect the election. So that specific tool that we're referencing often comes in ball peen and sledge variety. Mm-hmm. Will that be directly used to do anything that we're about to do here What it will be used, or could be used to do, along with many other variations of it that have been out for way longer than anybody's been talking about this specific tool. What it is going to do is it's going to help with the prep work portion of it. Because
and Nick, sorry to interrupt, but that tool that sometimes might be called the hammer, tell me if I'm wrong on this, that tool, a portion of it can be found fairly easily if you know what you're doing in what's called the wild. In other words, a portion of that particular tool, let's just call it the hammer, is actually available by those knowledgeable in the IT world in the wild, on legitimate platforms, correct?
Yeah, we've seen portions of that. I'm not going to mention the sites. I'm not going to, it's like, kind of like how to build a bomb. We're not going to tell people how to do, but there have been there's indications that is out in the wild, that you can find bits and pieces of it. Specifically, there's two components of it that if you feel the need to, you can find them with a little bit of effort, as they relate to Apple devices and rootkits that go with those Apple devices. And the other one that we've seen is also Apple related, but a little bit leaning more towards the desktop, the OS side of it. So iOS or Catalina, whatever they're up to now. So there's those two components that are floating around out there. And there is the usage of that word in context throughout the coding and also in some of the code comments. So that means, do we know for a fact that, that's it, that's the hammer, that's the thing we've been looking for? We can't say that for sure, but we can say that it's going to be some permutation of it, and it's not uncommon to see code from one platform make its way into another to create something entirely new, or have a segment of code do something very specific within another environment, whether that's decrypting or enumerating device IDs and stuff like that. So whether or not that's a small portion of it or the entire thing, is it the entire thing? I would say probably not, almost certainly not. But it's just more evidence that, yeah, that exists. And I could already hear the shrill shrieking from certain parties involved going, oh, the hammer exists. It doesn't matter what it's called, okay? And the reason I say it doesn't matter what it's called is, I'll give you an example. So I've been working on a project, and it's a current project that, as you know, Doc, if I quit dyeing my hair, I'd go completely gray at this point, thanks to these folks. But we had a database, a repository for a tremendous amount of very specific sorted data. And the slang term, I didn't come up with this, one of the other programmers did. We called it the abyss, because that's where all the data went. It's a big black hole. It practically has its own gravitational field around it, and that's where all the data goes. That's great. It was called the abyss throughout the entire development process of that project, which is still going on. But we've moved more towards a production version now, so guess what? It's no longer called the abyss. It's called, it's an acronym. Mm-hmm. Right. Now, if somebody came along and said, the abyss exists, and somebody pointed to the new name and said, well, no, it doesn't, who's right?
No, it exists.
It exists. It's just, it's by a different name.
Just a different label.
Right. And what I've seen, Doc, is I've seen a lot of people get bogged down in the semantics of what it is or isn't called. Right. And that's kind of infuriating, because you have to think about the capabilities of that system.
But the implication, Nick, is when they do this and they try to do this disinformation stuff, is that, oh, well, if the name is not exactly the same, then there's no way it not just doesn't exist. There's no way bad actors could do something like these people are talking about. And that is why they try to hook people into thinking, oh, you know what, this is just fiction.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I mean, and again, arguing semantics on that is kind of hilarious, because, I kind of look at it like this: whether or not you called a tank, it still exists and it still does what it's supposed to do at the end of the day. Just because you call it an armored combat vehicle as opposed to a tank does not mean the 105 millimeter smoothbore is any more or less effective. Right. So, and a lot of that comes down to, and I know I want to be very unpopular for saying this, Doc, and this goes hand in hand with my quest to be your most unpopular guest in the history of Operation Freedom, which I'd say I'm doing pretty good at thus far. A lot of it comes down to the integrity of certain individuals, certain platforms, right? Certain narratives.
Mhm.
It doesn't, because if you go their route, or if you go any of their routes, it's, well, if the hammer doesn't exist, that means we don't have anything to worry about because digital surveillance doesn't exist.
Right. And trust me, I'm from the CIA, and I'm a former CIA person, and trust me, that's the truth, right?
Well, yeah, because I mean, really, the debate gets skewed, Dave, into if the hammer doesn't exist, and then obviously there's no such thing as digital surveillance. Well, hell, in that case, if the hammer doesn't exist, I'll uninstall every firewall that I have, save a hell of a lot of money.
Right.
Right? So it's kind of ridiculous. It's like, look, if it's not called that and it's called something different, right, does that make it any more or less viable?
Right.
It's really, it comes down to, I call it, the Occam's razor approach, which is really very simple. It's, does the desire for that information, that access, I mean, in our example here, Doc, with our theoretical election here, I would say it sure as hell exists, because think of how much easier it makes it for me to get my hands on things like private keys and server keys and IPs and MACs and all the things that I need to go and do what it is that I'm about to do here in the next couple of minutes. So does that exist? Yes. Does that eliminate a lot of the reconnaissance work that would have to be done the old-fashioned way?
No. That's the key. That's the key, Nick, that nobody talks about other than you.
Right, and that's, so if you're going to give me access, so let's say, Nick.
So now you're in.
Right.
Okay, do the dirty.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're in, nothing's changed on your screen, right? And again.
Right. No, Jonna is kicking butt.
Jonna, she's 5,000 votes up, feeling pretty confident, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just navigating my way around here, and I'm looking for, there we are. Okay, now I'm where I need to be at, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little fun here. So what we're going to do is, first thing we have to do is we have to find, and I know IT professionals, cover your eyes and ears for this one because it's very elementary, but this is illustrative purposes only. So what we're going to do here is we have to find where that database or that particular bit of information is being hosted, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do a... There we are. Okay, nothing yet. We just got a hello world there. That's not very exciting. Maybe we got to we'll go a little deeper. We'll be a little more specific with the next one. So we're going to do sudo wv post list. Now I'm looking for a very specific set of parameters. So I'm going to go page type. Now, by the way, is anything changing on your screen?
No.
Okay. Bingo. Okay. So what we're going to do here is... And now, by the way, I'm not being lazy on this one, but what we are going to do is this. I do have a couple of CLIs already off screen here, so I don't have to type them out and bore you guys to death. So what we're going to do is this. Bingo. There is our theoretical, for illustration purposes only, database. Now, but this looks like it's just like a bunch of gibberish on screen.
Right.
You say, well, what the hell is this? What's that have to do with the price of tea in China? So what I'm looking for is somewhere in here. New York's a 4-year general election. This is all just some formatting around it. Oh, man, I'm in. This is right where, here we go. Here we are. Here are the vote totals in this very conveniently labeled table. Right. So now, anything change on your screen yet, Doc?
No, nothing.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to hit insert because we want to replace. Now, I'm thinking, now I'm having a sudden... moral bout here. Well, I am kind of undermining the very principles of democracy. Oh, there's that big bag of cash. Never mind. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to decide 25,000. Yeah, you know what? That looks like 35,000 to me. Like so. And just in case John has got any aspirations of victory, we're going to turn that into a. We're going to open up the margin a little bit. We're going to make that 28. Boom. Right? So now, I come down here, I do a, we're going to do one of these, like so, assuming it's going to let me do this.
But my numbers are the same, Nick.
Indeed they are. Why don't you go ahead and refresh your page?
Oh, I have to go refresh
and I'll do the same thing here for you. Here you go.
All right, I'm going to refresh it. Here we go. Oh, wait a minute. So some other precincts must have come in.
Mm-hmm. That was it.
Boom.
That's it. Now, what we're going to do is just to prove the point, and because I'm in a particularly jaunty mood.
Now, Nick, while you were doing all this, if somebody was watching in real time, would they have busted you?
Nope.
Why?
The only way you would have seen that happen, well, now let's be fair here. Could you have server level logging? Yes, of course. And we're pretending that doesn't exist for purposes of this. But a server level, in this instance here, if I go to my own server event log in the database, not in the individual machine. Now, in your laptop in front of you, Dave, if somebody impounded that and said, we're going to catch these hackers, are they going to see anything? No. They would have.
You've always taught me, Nick, always look at the log files.
Right.
So if after I'm saying, wait a minute, all of a sudden there must have been some big precincts come in, the vote totals jump significantly, I'm going to look at the log files just to make sure that, what would I see?
Well, if you went to the application log file, i.e. this entire WordPress installation, or you went to the event log on your laptop that's sitting in front of you right now,
right.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The only way you're going to see this, there's two ways you're going to see this. You're going to see this in a server event log, right? Which is what I'm connected to now on port 22 via SSH. You'll see that there. There will be registration of my connection. Or if you happen to have a packet sniffer connected to it, right? But, and there's a but there, this entire system would have to be configured from that because you don't just get to randomly do that. You have to have it pre-configured. So assuming that there was no packet monitor, I shouldn't say packet sniffer, there was no packet monitor on here, right? And I was smart enough, and I didn't want to make this too complicated, but to circumvent the server level log files, I'm done. My work is done here. Right? Now, if I'm in a particularly jaunty mood, Doc, here's what I'm going to do. I might even go so far as to say, you know what? These folks, they do like a good conspiracy, don't they? I'll keep them chasing their own rear ends for a while because now I'm going to do this. So we're going to enumerate some users here. Okay, so what we're going to do is, there's the users of this particular web application website. So we have me, obviously, who set this whole thing up, right? There's me. There's the election admin,
right?
Who is actually responsible for this particular page here and maintaining it. And then there's the Honorable Dr. Dave.
Right.
Right? Now, you guys are all administrators in there.
Right.
So what I'm going to do is just to keep the heat off of me and keep everybody looking inward, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it look like Dave did it. Sorry, Dave, you got some questions to answer, man. You went in and you just screwed with the election database. You're playing partisan favorites. By the time all the dust settles on that, I will be down somewhere on a very warm beach, sitting under a palm tree with a coconut drink, laughing my posterior off. Because now I want you to refresh your page.
I'm going to refresh it.
Go ahead and refresh it.
Yep.
Anything change?
Nope.
Okay. So now, if I go in the admin side of this,
right?
Okay, what is it going to look like? It's going to look like you logged in with your credentials and you changed the vote totals.
If they even get that far.
If they get that far, which we're going to do. We're going to have a little bit of fun here. So we're going to do a WP admin. Right now, this is all just very standard. Okay, and we're going to log in as Dave. Okay, so now we're logged in as Dave. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the page. Now, this is the back end of this web app website, right? And we're going to go and we're going to look, and we're going to see who's responsible for this, right? So now I'm Mr. Forensics guy, and I'm going to come in, right? And I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to do an edit. And I want to see the update log, right? So here's our simulated election database. This is now the front end of it. Okay. Oh, look, there's the author. There's Dave. All right, Dave, you got questions to answer, man. Now, if I go back to the revision log, right?
Yeah.
Who could be responsible for this? Currently, so this is the most recent revision. This is the original change. You see the original vote totals here, 25 and 30. They went to 35 and 28.
Right.
Who's responsible for it? Second cousin to Harvey the White Rabbit.
Wow.
Okay? So, absent that, now if I go back and I look at the original one, as we said earlier, revision by Mr. Admin. That is the your trusted election admin that works in the Secretary of State's office. I made that change at the server level through this terminal screen over here, and now I go forward, and it was revised by, well, we don't know who the hell it was revised by, but it certainly indicates that Dave might be responsible for this. Like I said, anybody needs me, I hear Bali is nice this time of year. We got a real nice place there with the giant bag of money that Mr. Taylor likely bestowed upon me. So the point of the story, and again, this is a very, very, very elementary example of how this stuff works, okay? It's completely facetious, and I do realize, again, IT professionals that are watching, InfoSec guys that are watching, this is a vacuum of reality, right? But the point to illustrate here is very simple, okay? The point to illustrate here is that you can impound all these voting machines that you want, okay? You can go through the log files of the individual voting machines, and you're not going to find anything. You're not going to find, like I said, I know I say it facetiously, but you're not going to find ftrump.exe or gobiden.dmg. They're not there. The amount of effort required to do this, the footprint left behind when you do something like this, is so much smaller, and the effectiveness is so much greater than trying to affect every individual machine by itself. Okay. Now, real quick, what you just saw here, where we refreshed the page and all of a sudden you saw the numbers jump. Now, for purposes, Doc, remember, you got all sorts of stuff going on around you. It's election day. It's mayhem. Yeah, okay, a couple of precincts just jumped in and reported. You're going to certify that. Right? So that's it.
Especially if I'm told to certify it.
Right, especially if you're told to certify it, right? So the point there, though, is I don't want people to get confused and say, oh, that totally explains what I saw on the screen on the lower third of CNN or Fox News when the numbers jumped, because that's two totally different things, right? That's not being reported from this database. That's Edison Reporting's weighted average predicted straw poll outcome. So those are not one and the same thing. So, but what I wanted to illustrate here is that there's a whole nother level. So my doing this at the Linux level, at the server level, affected what you saw here with absolutely zero evidence. So you could have, whatever event that you want and say you got your hands on these voting machines and you're going to open it up and you're going to find, the ftrump.exe program and all shall be vindicated. No, you're not. The other thing you're not going to find, and it's a word that's been thrown around recently, that recently, for the last, since 2020, that drives me absolutely up a wall, Dave, and I apologize, but you do have to listen to me rant about this. I'd say a good once, twice a week, is algorithm. You don't need an insanely complex algorithm to do this. Right. Look, if you're trying to do it real time, where you're trying to figure out, okay, how many votes are coming in? What do I need to wait by? There's a way you can just do a linear offset, first of all. And you can get, and it's been demonstrated, I forget the gentleman's name, but brilliant, brilliant guy, illustrated how, no matter whatever comes into a database. The other thing is, why would I do that again at the individual voting machine level? Because we're going to cut back to this screen here real quick. And this is an audible that was called, I Take No Responsibility for This. You can thank one of my very good friends for this idea. He came up with this last night in his infinite wisdom. And we're going to cut back here real quick. We're going to spend 30 seconds on it. I just want to show real quick. So there's a level that exists even beyond this. So this is the L in Linux, right? That affected the front end of what you see as the Secretary of State. Well, if I wanted to be really slick, right? So I can do this. So this entire web app is built on a database, MySQL, M. That's the M in LAMP. So MySQL is, if I want to access the actual database itself, I can just simply do this. And it does help if you run it as an admin. No, really, I've been doing this for 23 years. It's fine. So You'll notice now it says MariaDB, stands for database. So MariaDB is the actual core database that this entire web app is built on. Incidentally, this is the actual format that a vast majority of states and counties probably use. This one is not theory. This is not a real one, full disclosure. But this format, SQL-based databases, this is what they're designed for. Housing and tallying and interacting with large amounts of data. This is what they do, right? So if I want to, say, come in here and I want to start affecting things from, say, a database level, which would be even more difficult to catch. And yes, there is security that goes on here to try to prevent this, but it's mouse and mousetrap. We won't get into the minutia of it, but I can start executing SQL database commands. Okay, so I can hit, it's going to ask me here, you're about to paste the following lines. Yes, would you like to? And you hit \G for go. And lo and behold, now we start getting passwords. Oh, look, there's the Honorable Dr. Dave Janda. Passwords, username, your last login, the email you have associated with. There's your activation key, by the way. This is everything you've ever wanted to know about all the users that are a part of this system. This is even more insidious now and even more difficult to catch, right? And I would say if there was a bad actor that had something to do with election, screwed around with an election, they would probably be looking at the very same screen in whatever respective environment that they were in. Okay, so now let's have a little fun here. Let's really start to take this thing apart. I promise I won't spend very long on this, but this idea was given to me last night about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know, maybe it's because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Every idea seems good at that point. But let's go ahead and let's enumerate the tables in that database. Oh, look, there they are. Now we're actually, again, this is the actual infrastructure, the core of CMS, content management system. This is the M part. This is the management. Okay, let's get a little deeper here. Let's show full tables, because now as I can see them, I can edit them. Because you got to remember, I have admin access to all of this. All right, so I can do one of these, and it's going to tell me the type of table it is. Now we happen to know that that is in posts. So if I come in here, I can select from post. Watch this. Now, this is going to look like a lot of gibberish on your screen, but I'll, in about 2 seconds, I will show you why it's relevant. So we're going to do that. We're going to do a \go, because these are just database queries, is what these are. These are standard SQL database queries. Now this looks like a mess on my screen, but if I start to scroll up, oh, lo and behold, there's our election database. This is in the SQL level, right? So there are many known vulnerabilities with SQL. Okay, you talk about SQL injection. There's a million and two different ways to do it. I promise I'm not going to bore everybody or go super nerdy. But this here, if I make the edits in here, okay, yeah, you can get me through the server side, but I can cover my tracks back on the way out. I can start even removing users. I can add users. There's a lot that I can do. When you have access to a system like this, or you have access to this level within a system, you've gone God mode. You can do whatever you want. You can make anything look like however you want. Now, we're not going to edit this right now because we promised to keep this under an hour. But for purposes of demonstration, I promised a couple individuals that I would show this. This is very much... Now, this is in a WordPress environment. I understand it's MySQL, and it's called MariaDB, for those that know what they're doing that are watching. And this is not all like insane, hackery stuff. This is how a database admin manages large sets of data. Even say in a medical environment, if you have managed patient records, perfect example, right? With the same vulnerabilities. Read into that as you may.
Right.
So I can actually install cron scripts in here, which means at this time, on this day, do this thing. I don't even have to be logged in. It just happens. So everything that I just did in here can be formatted into a script where at 4:03 p.m. on election day, everything I just did all happens at once. I'm already on the beach somewhere,
right,
chilling out. That cron script happens, and then it clears itself. It erases itself. It executes one time. Okay. If you wanted to maintain an always-on connection, I know I just picked on the algorithm thing, but if I wanted to maintain, say, a balancer or a mathematical balance, I can connect it through this. Some folks might be familiar with webhooks. Those are always-on event listeners. Okay? This is where you would do that, and you'd have a hell of a time finding it unless you had a real, a very qualified InfoSec team, which, I don't know who these states or these counties are hiring, and it's going to come down to a skill set level. And, I have to think, and maybe I'm being a cynic on this, and I don't mean to, really pick on anybody here, but look, the smartest guys in the room are probably not working for the state or the county.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm just saying, and that's not a single slight towards any IT professional that might be in that capacity now, but the folks that are very good at this kind of stuff, not in every instance, but in many instances, they're not on the InfoSec side of this. They're on the personal gain side of this. Okay.
So let's go back to the beginning, Nick. Election integrity intervention, fact or fiction. I think that at the conclusion of this, it's evident that it's not fiction.
No, it's not. It can be done. There are parameters that are required, internet connectivity, because the way you stop me from doing this, you could not connect it to the internet. Just saying. Thought. Yeah, really. Have solid InfoSec policy in place, though it's very difficult now because of a lot of the work from home. But no, this is not fiction, Doc. This can be done. What is fiction, though, I will say, and I'm not going to name any one specific instance, but what I think is fiction is a lot of the more fanciful, more identitarian-driven, more us and them simplified kind of narratives where the technology and the plausibility of what can and can't be done almost takes a backseat to purely emotional-irrational, identitarian, politicized things. Because at the end, look, this is not a political environment. Most of the techies I know, we tend to lean libertarian, just leave us alone, let us do our thing, and don't bother us kind of thing. But what I would encourage people to do is, look, I mean, this is going to be going on for a while because our election system in this country is not perfect. It's so far from perfect, it couldn't get a bus back to perfect. Right? But the way, if nothing else, if all the election integrity investigations, if they uncover clerical errors, system inefficiencies, and things like that, guess what? You're not going to ever fix that unless you know where the problems are.
That's right.
Which is great. I mean, you're getting a free, you're getting a full, end-to-end analysis there. Embrace it. And as you say often, there's a lot of folks that would rather that not be fixed for fairly obvious reasons. I know Mr. Taylor is probably one of them that has no interest in that system being fixed because he just won. What I would encourage people to do is and this is wildly complex stuff, you have to devote your life to this stuff. You really do. To have a deep and profound understanding of it. And you have to enjoy it, right? If you don't enjoy this stuff, you're never, you're not going to get it. So, unfortunately, you have to take a lot of times. You have to take people's word on, oh, this happened and here's why. Well, having seen this, I would encourage people to just put on your critical thinking hat, and listen to it and just, I know this was very elementary and it's very simplistic, and I have my ADD style of presentation, but apply a little bit of rational thinking. When somebody tells you, 1 million people all hacked a voting machine and they were circling on a secret space station, and that's back it down a notch and think about the practical, of which a lot of you saw here. And no, it's not that it can't be done. It's just the plausibility of catching the people that are doing it is ever increasingly small. And again, just use, be critical about it. Think about the plausibility of it. Even if it's from your own, whatever your career may be, just think, wow, man, if I had to get like 5,000 people to do something on time, every time, perfect. Could I do that? No. Well, what are the chances they did? So hopefully this was helpful.
It's very helpful, Nick. I appreciate you taking us through this because it really is eye-opening to anyone who watches this of what can be done, what potentially has been done, and it opens up a realm of thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to fix it, or at least to address fixing it? And it takes a lot of the smoke and mirrors out, what you've just done over the past hour, Nick. I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. And thank you, folks, for joining us. Until next time, Dave Janda and Nick Ruiz signing off. As we always say, dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.